All right, so today we're going to dive deep into a true giant of the Three Kingdoms period in China, the one and only Zhao Yun. He's an absolute legend, but the real story is even better.
Now, if you've ever played a Dynasty Warriors game or seen pretty much any movie about this era, you know the image, right? This unstoppable warrior in shining armor, a spear-wielding force of nature who can just wade into an army and come out the other side. Basically, the perfect hero.
But, and this is the big question, who was the actual guy? Because the historical Zhao Yun, well, he is so much more interesting than the fictional superhero. So let's do it. Let's separate the incredible facts from the equally incredible fiction.
So where does this larger-than-life image even come from? Well, most of what we think we know comes from this epic 14th century novel, Romance of the Three Kingdoms. And you gotta understand, this book took real historical figures and just cranked all their abilities up to 11.
And in that novel, oh man, Zhao Yun gets the superstar treatment. He's this untouchable fighter who can duel anyone. He supposedly kills dozens of generals in a single fight, and he's a core member of the 5 Tiger Generals. He's basically a perfect anime hero dropped into ancient China. And this right here, this is the myth we need to unpack.
So let's start with the big stuff, his most famous moments on the battlefield. We're going to look at the epic story, and then we're going to look at what the historical records actually say. Okay, this is his most iconic scene, the Battle of Changban. The story says he charged into an enemy army 7 times, killed over 50 generals, and saved his lord's baby. Insane, right? Well, the reality was a complete disaster. Liu Bei's army was utterly crushed, and he actually abandoned his own family to escape. Zhao Yun didn't fight an entire army. He did something that was, arguably, way more courageous. He turned around and rode alone back into that chaos, found his lord's wife and infant son, and got them to safety. So you see, it wasn't an act of godlike power, it was an act of almost unbelievable loyalty and guts.
Now here's something really interesting. Zhao Yun's single greatest moment of tactical genius, it usually gets misattributed in pop culture to the famous strategist Zhuge Liang. But nope, history is clear. This was all Zhao Yun.
So get this, Zhao Yun's out with a small force and runs smack into the main enemy army. He gets chased back to his camp. Instead of panicking and barring the gates, he does the opposite. He orders the gates thrown wide open, all the banners taken down, all the war drums silenced. Total silence. The enemy general, the brilliant Cao Cao, shows up, sees this completely open, quiet camp, and his brain just screams, "Ambush!" He freezes, then orders a retreat. The second they turn their backs, Zhao Yun gives the signal, drums start beating, archers open fire, and they charge into the now panicked and confused army, shattering them. That isn't just bravery, folks. That is ice-cold, psychological warfare. Just brilliant.
But look, being a genius on the battlefield is one thing. What really truly defined the man was his character. And this is where the historical person and the legend are actually pretty close. His integrity was maybe his greatest weapon.
So, check out this story. After conquering a territory, the former leader offers Zhao Yun his widowed sister-in-law in marriage to form a political bond. Zhao Yun flat out refused. He said the guy's intentions weren't clear, that it could be a trap, and that it was just ethically wrong. This is a guy who's always thinking 5 steps ahead, putting his principles way before any personal gain.
And he wasn't just brave on the battlefield. He was brave in the war council. When his lord Liu Bei, blinded by grief, wanted to launch this massive invasion for personal revenge, Zhao Yun was one of the only guys who stood up and said, "This is a terrible idea." He argued their real enemy was elsewhere and that this was strategically a disaster. Well, Liu Bei listened, and he went on to suffer the single most catastrophic defeat of his entire life. Zhao Yun was right all along.
You know, you can tell a lot about a commander by how they handle a loss. And even in defeat, Zhao Yun was a master. In his last campaign, his smaller force was beaten by a much bigger army. But while another part of their main army just fell apart in panic, Zhao Yun conducted a retreat so perfect, so disciplined, that the enemy was actually afraid to even chase him. He saved his men, saved his supplies, and then he refused any rewards for doing it. That is a professional.
Okay, so if this guy was so brilliant, so loyal, and so respected, what about the biggest myth of all? Let's talk about his actual job, his rank.
Yeah, that whole famous 5 Tiger Generals thing, it's a total invention of the novel. It never happened. The real-life equivalent was a group known as the 4 Quarters Generals, and these were the absolute top military positions in the kingdom. And, as you can see, Zhao Yun wasn't one of them.
His real title was General of the Assisting Army.
Now, this wasn't a demotion. It was a completely different and unbelievably critical role. He wasn't a frontier marshal commanding huge armies. Think of him more like the chief of the royal bodyguard and the ultimate special ops troubleshooter all rolled into one. His job required something far rarer than battlefield command. It required absolute 100% unquestionable trust.
So, when you strip away all the fiction, the historical Zhao Yun wasn't some demigod who could kill armies by himself. No, he was a brave, brilliant, and deeply principled commander whose calm courage and flawless integrity, honestly, that makes him far more impressive than the myth.
And that kind of leaves us with one final thought, doesn't it? The novel gave him these impossible, legendary victories. But history gave him a perfect, unblemished character. So the real question is, which one is the more powerful legacy? Which one truly lasts forever?